Shoot.
Okay, so we're live on YouTube.
Thank you. I think everybody's muted currently, other than our city manager. So good.
Michelle, could you make Jeff Green a panelist for tonight?
You can't hear me, can you? Oh, there he is. Okay, there's John. Vince, I have Patrick in the waiting room. Is that okay, or does he need to be a panelist?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, John.
Evening, John.
Mayor. You nervous, Andrew?
We are live on YouTube. And I'll be starting the recording again in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Michelle, out of curiosity, how many AV ballots do you have so far?
We sent out 6,133 and we have received 5,563 back.
Wow.
The highest count we've ever had is about 2,000.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
So we shall see what tomorrow brings in terms of turnout. But we're on track to break records from at least the time I've been here.
That's good. I sent in about 1,200 of them, so.
I'm sure we rejected 11,999.
I thought if I said that would make YouTube and then it would go national, so.
Great.
That's
All
just what we want to be known for. Matt Buds is cringing.
No, Matt just cringes at the hanging chads.
Man, I'm just surprised you haven't got hit by a car yet based on where you're sitting.
Just see what tomorrow brings. That's all I'll say.
Michelle, I know we have a couple minutes yet, but I have not heard anything from Councilwoman Whitman. I don't know if anybody else has.
I don't see anything from her right at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna let go. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording on again.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just about a minute out, so we will start. We've heard, I don't have any messages or otherwise.
Neither do I.
Well,
I texted her.
She should be, she's. All right, Vince, I'm moving Jeff up to panelist.
Whenever you're ready, we can start. Oh, was it time? Yeah.
No, it's time. It's just let me see. There may be somebody at my door. Staff is still here working. We're all still working on the elections. I took a
Sure.
break to work on council.
Sure. Take care of that and then just let me know.
Just 1 second.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for the leeway, Your Honor. I'm ready.
Absolutely. What is, I have 6:03. At this time, we'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
And just a reminder to council, we need your physical location where you are right now as I'm calling the roll. City and state. No. Councilperson Lamore,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Felder,
Here, 322 Crampton Drive, Monroe, Michigan.
Whitman,
Not heard.
okay. Eiko Angeli,
Present, Monroe, Michigan.
Vining,
Here, the city of Monroe, Michigan.
Germaine,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Mayor Clark.
Present, City of Monroe, Michigan.
And just for consistency, because I'm an elected as well, Michelle Lavoy, Clerk Treasurer, City of Monroe, Michigan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our next item, please.
I will go ahead and do the invocation. Guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
This time, if you joined all in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item would be any amendments to the agenda.
We'll go to the city manager first. Any items, Mr. Pastu, that are adjustments to the agenda? You muted, please.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Your Honor. I'm going to ask that item 2914, which is the IHM City of Monroe PUD agreement, be moved from consent agenda to the council action.
Okay, only item?
I'll make a motion that we.
That's it. Yep.
We amend the agenda to move 2914 to count the council action agenda, part of the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Icolangeli, supported by Councilman Lamore, that item number 2914 be moved from the consent agenda to the council action location of the agenda. No other amendments or adjustments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman is not here. Icolangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaini,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item are citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. And if we have, I see we do have some attendees this evening. If there's, will be any citizens' comments at this time, mindful of the kind of the rules of the chamber, which is make sure you state your name and jurisdiction of residence, as well as knowing that while being recorded, that the time frame is 3 minutes for here items, and please address the chair for any comments that you may have, and we'll start there. Michelle, any requests to?
I see a hand raised from Katie Beth.
Okay, at this time, if you would bring her to the platform, please.
Okay.
Oh, I see that there, and I see muted. Katie Beth, if you would move forward, name and jurisdiction.
Sure. Katie Beth Davis, 15277 La Pleasance Road. And I was just calling in to say
Katie
thank
Beth?
you to, yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, just need township, city, or?
Oh, sorry, Monroe Township, District
Thank you.
1.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes. And I just wanted to thank Michelle and the whole office. I know this has been a rough election process and very demanding on everybody. And I just wanted to say thank you and good luck to anybody that has anybody running, and good luck to everybody that is running in Monroe and all of our surrounding areas in the county. And have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie Beth, and thank you for the comments for the clerk treasurer's office and the employees. I know they're working very diligently in the process here, as they always do, but this is we heard earlier, many absentees and many voters that we see the potential. So thank you. Other comments this evening at the opening citizens' comments? I don't see any hands.
I don't either.
Very well. We'll move forward. Next item, please.
So the next items are under public hearings. Item 2918, Blight Board Up Fees Public Hearing. Public hearing to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of Blight Board Up fees where owners have failed to pay for same. And there are no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, did you want to make a comment before we call the public hearings, or something later during the consent agenda?
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. If I, just may that, since we talked about this last month, I can tell you that there's a handful of items related to the grass and weed cutting where the property owners were received notice of this going on their taxes. The initial invoice went to the mortgage company preceding their title transfer. And so I got a handful of those that I'm aware of. I'll work with them. I would ask council to approve all of these tonight, and then we can make adjustments at the December board of review. The other one of note, and this would be the first public hearing that you have, is the blight board up fees. There's a large item on there, amount of a little over $4,000. I talked with the son of the property owner and encouraged him that to enter into a payment agreement, that we would do so by the end of the month. And so I would ask again, you still keep that on there, but with the understanding if through the clerk treasurer Lavoie and myself, if we're able to reach a payment agreement, then we would approach the board of review to have that removed from the tax roll.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. I know this meeting comes up once a year, and we know that we receive calls, so I appreciate the upfront work done by the city manager and administration to clean up some of those. And at this time, I'll move forward with the public hearing. The first being, open the public hearing on item 2918, the blight board up fees public hearing. Any comments regarding this public hearing this evening? Any comments from those that are in attendance in the meeting, virtual meeting?
There is a hand raised, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. If you would move the person forward. I see it's Brandon. 1 second. Brandon, you're unmuted. You have a comment regarding on this public hearing item, please.
Yes, Your Honor, I do. My name is Brandon Seabarth. I live in Monroe, Michigan. I was actually speaking in reference to the almost $5,000 bill that Mr. Pastu was just speaking about. Now, my mother and I do object to the amount involved, but we are going to be speaking with Mr. Pastu to be seeing what kind of an arrangement we can be coming to, so that way we can get this issue resolved. We weren't exactly happy with the time frame that I was given working on the blighted things in question. I was taking care of the issues before they came in and removed the items that was we were billed for. I just want to let you guys know that we would be taking care of that, and that we did object to the amount and the time frame. I was almost finished with removing some of the blight before they had come in and taken it.
Okay, Brandon. Well, thank you for your comments. I know that if you're with having contact with the administration, Mr. Pastu, that is the path. Tonight's action is, as Mr. Pastu said, is to get things moving forward. When we also welcome those opportunities for the administration to have the conversations and make action that's necessary within their office. So I appreciate your additional input this evening.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Other comments this evening regarding the blight board up fees public hearing? I see no others. So at this time, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2919, rental housing inspection fees, public hearing, to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of rental housing inspection fees where owners have failed to pay for same. And there are no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office.
Thank you. This time, I'll open the public hearing on item 2919, rental housing inspection fees, public hearing. Any comments for this public hearing? Any comments from those in attendance this evening? No comments that I see.
I see none.
This time, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2920, weed and grass cutting fees, public hearing, to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of weeds and grass cutting fees where owners have failed to pay for same. There are no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office.
Very well. At this time, I will open the public hearing on item 2920, the weed and grass cutting fees public hearing. Any comments from those in attendance this evening regarding this public hearing? Any comments at all regarding this public hearing? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, item 2943, approval of employment with Paula Smith for city assessor position.
Thank you. Under council action, Mr. Pastu, an introduction on this?
Thank you, Your Honor. We're obviously delighted to offer an employment agreement for council's consideration to Miss Paula Smith, who's worked in the assessor's office for a number of years, most recently in the clerk treasurer's office. She does meet the minimum qualifications, what used to be referred to as a level 4 assessor. Now it's a Michigan master assessing official, some term that's difficult to remember now, but she does meet the requirements of that. It's a very standard employment agreement that we have proposed with Ms. Smith for this position here that would probably look to start sometime in mid-November. I did reference in there that, we're looking at a 3-year term. She would be paid at the mid-range, roughly the mid-range for that pay classification. Obviously, she's got some familiarity with, a lot of familiarity with the city. But clearly, certainly, with Mr. Geisch, he was at the top of the pay scale based on his experience and tenure with the city. The one item I put in there was we were trying to work some language with our labor attorney, Mr. Jim Green. Ms. Smith is eligible to retire in August 19th of 2021. And in the unfortunate or unanticipated event, if there was a termination by the council of her employment, we put some language in there that would protect her for the full employment that she'd be entitled to, which I sent to council this morning. And so with that, I just asked for council's consideration to approve the employment agreement with Ms. Paula Smith.
Councilman Lamore, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd just like to make a motion.
Okay, and then we'll see if there's comments. Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the employment agreement with Paula Smith to serve as the city assessor, subject to final approval by labor attorney Jim Green and city manager Vince Pastu, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder on item 2943, the approval employment with Paula Smith, city assessor position. Any other comments from council? Very well. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Echoangeli,
Yes.
Vining, Jim, yes. Kelly, yes. Okay. Germaine,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is 2914, and that is SSIHM City of Monroe PUD Agreement Amendment.
Mr. Pastu, I think maybe Mr. Green, I'm not sure who might be speaking to this.
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Green talk a little bit about the fairly small change since we presented this to council, I believe, last week. So, Mr. Green.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Pastu. Jeffrey Green, Director of Community Development. At the last meeting, we provided some updates on this project in particular. And essentially what's happening is the IHM has proposed amending the PUD agreement that they entered into with the city of Monroe. Over the past year or more, the IHM has been undertaking a number of renovations and improvements to the site, at the complex and in the buildings. Most of these changes have been primarily interior. And not only is the agreement bringing some of the uses that are already underway into compliance, but they're also introducing some more of those. The PUD agreement amendment that we sent out that we had discussed basically looked at the section 2.1, which you would have seen in the prior. I did send out a slightly revised amendment today that added just a portion of a sentence. And that was looked at, I think Friday by Mr. Buds. I had an opportunity to look at it this weekend, and it was between, after we reviewed it, it was sent from the attorneys for the IHM as a recommendation. And essentially what we're doing is, in the old language, the old agreement, it was basically had a reference to section 9.2 of the zoning code, which was the commercial office district. The recommendation that had been made initially by the IHM was they would like to change this to uses in the C1 local commercial district, simply because that is more in keeping with the things that they're doing there on the site currently. One of the things that they felt they wanted to clarify, they being the IHM, was the language in 2.1 C, which was to include a restaurant with bar. And as I talked about last week, that is one of the things that the IHM is introducing at the site. They are going to have a restaurant that will open soon for not only their patrons and their clients there, but also the public, and along with the bistro. But they may have a bar that will open up along with the restaurant to the public at some point in the future. Now, that hasn't been established as to exactly when. And again, there was some clarification that legal counsel for the IHM was requesting. That was, again, the insertion of the language that says including a restaurant with a bar. Now, when we look at the current zoning code and the C1 district, restaurants under permitted uses, restaurants are allowed, and it has accessory lounges are permitted. Bars, taverns, and lounges are listed as special use. So then when you go to special use, of course, it has restaurants with a liquor license. So it kind of creates a gray area where restaurants with lounges are allowed, may be permitted, but restaurants, if it's called a bar, falls under a special use. So again, the request coming from the IHM was basically to clarify that language up, and so that there's no ambiguity. Again, Mr. Buds has reviewed it, I've reviewed it, and it was proposed by the IHM. We are recommending approval of the agreement as amended.
Very well. I'll see if there's any questions from council as we move forward. I see Councilwoman Germaine, you have your hand up. Is it a question or a motion?
It's a question. What's the difference between a bar and a lounge?
Well, typically the zoning ordinance would have that defined. And of course, that's, as I said, it's one of those gray areas where I think probably when Mr. Buds and I both looked at it initially, we probably both thought that it would fall under a permitted use. But again, the IHM just wanted to make that clear, and that there was a bar with this. Again, I wouldn't see any difference in it, but we don't have it. I have it defined in the current zoning code.
Thank you.
Council Michael. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Yeah, I took a look at the agreement, and the one thing I noticed was that we no longer have a C1 district in the zoning code. The closest thing that comes to C1 is CG, which is commercial general under the new zoning code. And under CG, restaurants, bars, breweries, wineries, and cideries are a permitted use, along with restaurants. So I think we need to, C1 refers to the old zoning code. If we're doing an amendment today, I think we should be referring to the new zoning district.
So maybe I'm looking at Mr. Buds too, because I know we're in the process of that new zoning. So are we one in front of the other? Is it something that can be moved along? I see Mr. Buds, and I'll see if he has an answer for us for that one. Go ahead, Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, I would say, well, certainly we all know what is envisioned and coming down the road by way of the zoning ordinance. I guess I would say my perspective is where we stand right now is what we have in place at the time this amendment is proposed. I certainly agree with Councilman Icoangeli that moving forward, that's appropriate. And if that's a what I'll say generally quick and non-controversial amendment in the future, I certainly have no problem with that. I can't imagine that the IHM would have any problem with that. I believe they have some representatives attending the meeting. If they wanted to speak to that, they could use the raised hand at the appropriate time. But I guess I would say from my perspective, given that the current zoning ordinance is what we have in front of us at the current time while we're making this amendment, I think that reference is appropriate, but also would acknowledge, obviously, that's a process well down the road and hopefully concluding in the near future.
Your Honor, my understanding is I thought we adopted the zoning code.
No.
If I'm not mistaken, is it our next meeting coming to us?
That is correct.
Councilman, you're correct. We had it scheduled for the previous meeting or two, but we had to pull it back because of I think a posting or an item. So while we've looked at it multiple times as a council, we've not yet. I think we said it was that extended agenda going forward for our next meeting. So we'll see it there. It's just coming, unfortunately, a meeting before.
Well, I would still offer that we're this close. We've already had the public hearing on the zoning code. Not to confuse things in the future, I think we should reference the new zoning code classification and not use the one that we're going to be getting rid of in about a week.
So I guess my thought is to make sure we pass what we have is if it's C1, and can we, and I'm looking at Mr. Buds as well, maybe a thought is to insert there and if or as approved to I believe you said CG, that it be carried forward. I'm looking at Mr. Buds to see if that's appropriate.
Your Honor, I have no issue with a parenthetical that says under the current C1 zoning and the anticipated CG zoning under the proposed zoning ordinance scheduled for future hearing, or we can work that language in if council is amenable to that, and I presume the IHM will be amenable to that too. I have no problem with that type of parenthetical to address both sides of that.
Well, Your Honor, just to continue from a zoning and land use point of view, C1 requires a bar to have a special use approval. Whereas in the CG, that's a permitted use by right. So I think it's a lot cleaner based on what they want to do to reference the new zoning code rather than the old one and then include restaurant and bar as a permitted use.
I understand the point. We have
Mr. Mayor, if I
comment?
might.
Oh, okay, well, I'll get one more comment from council. Maybe you can answer them both.
Sure.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think it's going to be, I am inclined to agree with Councilman Ike-Wangeli, but I think it's bigger than this particular case. I think with all the ordinances that we've passed, with all the PUDs that we've done, with everything that's touching the zoning ordinance as it is now, we're going to have littered all over the place out-of-date zoning references. Is there one ordinance that council can pass that retroactively updates, C1 becomes CG, and then any other zoning, the old zoning ordinance is now mapped to the new zoning ordinance, and we can just do all that at once? Because we're going to have these sorts of things all over the place. Is that we can accomplish? I guess that's for the attorney.
Sure. And then Mr. Green had a comment. I'll take that, and as our city attorney ponders your question.
Well, I was just going to say that, since the agreement has been signed, we've went back and referenced, issues related to the agreement. And we simply go back to the existing code at the time to look and see what those uses are. I think that's probably a pretty common thing. Again, we understand that there will be changes. I think if we want to add a parenthetical where we reference the new one, I certainly will not hurt. But I think again, if I had a question come up on this in a year, I would go back and look at that zoning code that it was passed under, what those uses were, and basically utilize that to make a determination. But so I'm not sure that we would have a general action that would incorporate everything that we've done under the zoning code. But again, I'll leave that up to the attorney. I'm not an attorney.
Mr. Buds, any other comments? And then I see Councilman Conjly has a follow-up. But go, if Mr. Buds, any other comments? And if not, I'll go to the councilman.
I would recommend to the attorney that if you're going to use C1 in your agreement, because I've done these before, that you need to attach to the agreement an exhibit that's got the exact pages out of the zoning code and that they're initialed, because what happens in the future is that when these agreements are brought back up, people start questioning under what code was it adopted under. So if you're going to use C1, then I would attach an exhibit to the agreement, so, and have it initialed and dated. So it's a well-wrapped package.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see Mr. Butts had any final comments. So I think I understand where we're at. I see why putting something in there as the addition of a comment with the anticipation of. So it and also including a copy of the C1 initialed in the agreement for everybody's benefit. So I guess that's where we're at. Is there other comments on this? Councilman Whitman has joined us as well. Councilman Conjly.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the PUD amendment between the City of Monroe and the Sisters of the IHM, and that the attorney, in addition to the agreement, attach as an exhibit the current C1 section of the current zoning code as an exhibit.
There's motion by Councilman Conjly. I'm sorry, I missed the second. Was that Councilman Felder? Yes, thank you. Motion by Councilman Conjly, supported by Councilman Felder on item 2914, the PUD agreement amendment. Any final comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaine,
yes,
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments, the amount should read $890,196.38, 890,196.38.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion?
Yes, Your Honor, 2941.
Other items on the consent agenda council wish to have pulled for further discussion? Are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening as an attendee wish to have pulled for further discussion? I see no hands raised. With that, a motion will be in order. Councilman Felder?
Your Honor, I motion that all items not pulled from the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and any resolutions adopted.
Second.
second,
Okay, got two of those. Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore. All items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file. Resolutions adopted and actions taken. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaine,
yes,
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is item 2941, Traffic Committee Minutes from October 28th, 2020 meeting.
Councilman Conjly.
Your Honor, thank you. I took a look at the fact sheets. It says here that there was the traffic committee took a look at removing parking on one side of St. Mary's between Noble and Lorraine. And the statement that struck me was due to concerns over excessive parking and inability of public safety and public service vehicles to access the roadway. Now, the question do I have as part of the traffic committee's deliberations, was there any type of feedback from the fire and the police department relative to their inability or ability to service this area?
Mr. Pastu, I know Mr. Lewis is on. see if he has any comments regarding the context. I know that there was on the traffic committee is Captain Tolstead, so he would have had comments if there were any regarding that. I do not recall that there were inability. There was a discussion about the width of the lane with parking on both sides. I see Mr. Lewis, but I don't see his.
You want me to promote him to panelist?
Please,
Would you
yes.
please? Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. I guess I'll answer that question, say yes, as the mayor indicated, Captain Tolstedt is a member of the committee. I guess I was restating the concerns as stated by the applicant. We didn't have anything on file from either of the departments that said they were unable to. That was the statement made by the applicant. So we typically will report it out on the agenda the way the request letter reads. So obviously at the committee level, it was felt by a 3-2 vote that the concerns over emergency vehicles were not acute enough to make a change at this time. So I guess that's the statement I can make relative to comments to that effect.
Your Honor?
Yes, Councilman.
Yep, I took a ride over there this weekend to take a look at it. And it appears that it is tight. And although, you know, Captain Tolstedt from the police department weighed in on his opinion, when we get an opinion from the fire department, they usually respond to emergencies with their pumper trucks, which are a little bit on the wide side. And every time, even if a resident says that there's an issue with public safety and public service, I always think that we need to get an opinion from both police and fire relative to delivery of those services or the inability to deliver those services as part of the deliberation.
Mr. Lewis, in the, I guess the review, because this goes back months, is this sent to the department, various department staff, if that may have a role to play in the decision or background from the city perspective?
Quite honestly, Your Honor, we've been dealing with this since January. I'd have to go back and look at the file, see if we ever directly solicited comments from the fire department. It's sort of turned into I'll call it largely a neighborhood issue. I mean, we did a survey and we've got a number of people back and forth on both sides of the issue. I'd have to look and see if we actually solicited fire department comments on that. I know that this is a street that's had parking on both sides of it for all indications 50 years. So I don't know that there's necessarily, we've never had issues raised before, and this doesn't necessarily represent a change, although there is some comments that the parking's become a little more intense due to additional vehicles from one household. This is one where it was a tough call because we've had so many residents over the years that have held this up as I'll say the gold standard for traffic calming, because it is, it's tight and we don't have any speeding complaints down here, but as we know, sometimes one resident can tip that balance. The engineering department did recommend, based on the original survey vote of 12 to 10 of the residents, that we would try it for a 6-month trial period and evaluate after the winter. After having some testimony from some residents, it was decided against that. So if you'd like me to go back and directly solicit comments from the fire department, that's fine, but this doesn't represent a change. So we left it as it is for now.
I would also recommend, if you do that, in this case or in the future, that you also loop in the superintendent of the Department of Public Services relative to snow removal based on the size of that equipment. I think the reason why I'm sensitive to this is because I've seen it happen on the south side of the city, where we've had a lot of single family owner occupied homes converted into rental. And all of a sudden the parking on the streets just becomes compounded with the number of people that are living in these neighborhoods that never really lived there before. So I think we just have to be concerned a little bit, or at least evaluate it based on current conditions, not 50 years ago, because 50 years ago, over on the south side of the river, those were all single-family owner-occupied homes. Now, a lot of them are all converted into duplexes and triplexes. So we have twice the amount of parking on the streets that we have. So it's just a concern when I see something in a staff report or in a fact sheet that talks about the inability of public safety and public service. Just a flag that gets raised.
Your Honor, I'll speak to the public services side of things here. I mean, this is where the balance of, you know, my role as the city's engineer and public services director with the overall goals of the city. I mean, we're looking at that balancing act between traffic calming, you know, and ability to plow the street. I mean, if we asked what would we prefer, our public services department would say, yeah, we'd love to have parking only on one side of every street because it makes it that much easier to clear. And that, in fact, was one of the concerns about going to parking on one side, was that we would never get the other side cleared too. So I'll represent the Department of Public Services, but if it would please the council, we will specifically ask for feedback from the fire department. And if it's worth revisiting to the committee on that basis alone, we will do so.
So the items on the agenda for the council for consideration to accept the minutes. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe Borges was also in this conversation at one time and point as well, because I've had some complaints from neighbors on Borges as well regarding the same issue.
Well, I guess I'll address that. Is, you know, when this came up with St. Mary's and the Borges, and I think Godfrey kind of weighed in, but we received no application or request for action from residents on those streets. There was one resident that requested the St. Mary's, and then actually it started as the entire length of St. Mary's. But as the surveys were sent out to all the residents and came back, there was really one block that was in at that time about a 12 to 10 to change. But some residents, because of new residents and movement and stuff, they came forward, weighed with their opinion. It came to a equal standstill between the, as you can see, 11 to 11. And so the thought of in the committee anyways was, you're changing it for the idea for the request of one, but it changes the, I guess, the argument to the other side, and their statements during the meeting was about, if we're, you know, while it is a challenge on parking at some days and sometimes, if you remove half the parking, it's only going to make the problem even greater for the ability for the residents to find space to park on the street. And it did come down to an individual with multiple vehicles. That was the concern of the resident primarily, who made this, brought this to the traffic committee. So just a follow-up comment. So again, it's on the council for council's action, whether to accept the minutes or not, and then some follow-up. Councilman Michelangelo.
Your Honor, I don't have a problem accepting the minutes. I guess when I'm saying that in the future, when there's a request like this, that there should be a check, at least a check sheet that goes to police, fire, and DPW to get their observations on those issues. Say this in general. Traffic issues at the local level should be based on prudent public safety and engineering and traffic safety and traffic calming. I don't think we need to, we take too many surveys, and we shouldn't base decisions solely on surveys of what the residents in the neighborhood want. I hate to say it that way, but there are sometimes greater issues other than just personal opinions in terms of how the streets should function relative to a traffic calming and traffic control position. So, but I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2020 Mayor's Traffic Committee meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore. On item 2941, the traffic committee minutes. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Yermani,
yes,
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
I have no other items, Your Honor.
We'll go to council comments, and it's November, so we'll start with Councilman Lamore. Any comments this evening?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further comment.
Very well. Councilman Felder.
Just a brief update. A couple weeks ago, I think I informed the council that the Commission on the Environment was applying for a county environmental fund grant. I wanted to update you guys. We did receive that grant in the amount of $2,000 with the and we were able to secure letters of endorsement from Ducks Unlimited, the River Raisin Watershed Council, Monroe Township, and Frenchtown Township. So we are very grateful for that. So they will be spraying on the river for Flowering Rush this Wednesday. Just a note to all the residents. And then, of course, please vote tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you for the follow-up on that, Councilman. I appreciate you making those contacts and some funds to help with the river and the environment. Councilwoman Whitman, comments this evening.
I apologize for being tardy, and I just want to remind everyone to vote, and hopefully we'll see what the outcome is without it taking 2 or 3 days. So that's all I have to comment. Thank you.
Councilman Michelangeli.
Yeah, several things, Your Honor. The first one is this has been kind of an ongoing issue with me relative to the service request under My Monroe. We're all aware on council, and the community is aware that we've invested a significant amount of money in the Orchard East area, primarily with the construction of the fire station, and then with the amount of investment that we've put into Labor Park and the ALCC facility. There is a house on Winchester, on the east side of Winchester, between 2nd and 3rd Street, that the porch is totally filled with junk. And the side in the backyard is starting to collect a lot of debris. And I've turned this in to the My Monroe service request. And the one issue that I have with the program is that I just get back a response, and I don't know who it's from, but they just say that your request has been closed out. Thank you. And then I go back a week later and I look, and the condition is the same. If this is a rental property, I would think we need to have it inspected, because if the inside of the home looks like the outside of the home, we have problems. So that's one issue. The second issue is something that I brought up a month ago, and I just want to keep it in front of council, primarily the manager and the city attorney, about my favorite house on the corner of 2nd and Harrison Street, and what the status of that is.
Mr. Festu?
I'll let Mr. Buds provide a little update with where that is.
Thanks. Hand his hand up, please, Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, I am either pleased or disappointed, depending on your perspective, to indicate that the Construction Board of Appeals meeting is tomorrow evening, or I'm not sorry, not tomorrow, Wednesday evening for that property, in which case I've had the property owner personally served with documentation because he was evading our certified mail efforts. Regarding that matter, I anticipate that that hearing will proceed forward Wednesday evening in front of the Construction Board of Appeals, given the property owner his due process right in time to object to the demolition of that property. As we've talked about before, I don't see how there's any good faith basis for that, but we're giving him his opportunity to make any case he has. From that point forward, assuming he does not appear, I'll evaluate whether we need any court approval for that. I have spoken with the city manager. I don't anticipate that that's going to be necessary, given that we had him personally served with the notice of the Construction Board of Appeals hearing. He would have a right to appeal the decision of the Construction Board of Appeals to court if he so desired. And once that period of time runs, which is approximately, I want to say off the top of my head, and I will confirm this 21-day period. Once that's run, then we would be free to go ahead and conclude the demolition on that structure and assess the amount of the demolition against the property.
Councilman?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you for the update. I'll put that in my calendar, my status calendar, to ask in 2 weeks. The third thing is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, which is the old MDEQ, which is now Eagle, has a available to communities to apply for a coastal zone management grant, which is due the middle of December. I think the city of Monroe should apply for the grant, and because we are a coastal community, and use the funds to match local money to do a more detailed plan for the Orchard East area, the port, and parts of the battlefield and the linear green park that's part of the overall master plan. We had in our budget to do a more detailed sub-area plan for this area. I think we should leverage some of our money with state money to do a little bit more, get a little bit more robust budget and plan done for the area. The application process isn't that difficult, and I think it's been a number of years since the city has received a CZM grant. So that's the third item. The fourth item is Andrew Felder, with your fiscal and financial background, I wish you the best of luck tomorrow. I personally think you would make a great county treasurer. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Vining. You're muted, please. Oh, there you go.
Yes, thank you. I'm having some trouble with my device and the audio.
Sound great right now.
Last week, I spoke to the council about naming policy that we want to implement. And I couldn't have known when I spoke to you guys last week about that on October 31st, 2020, we lost Monroe native and legendary gospel artist Bishop Rance L. Allen. He was 71 years old. He was born and raised in the Orchard East neighborhood. Bishop Allen and his brothers Stephen and Thomas made up the Grammy-nominated platinum-selling group, the Rance Allen Group. And first, I want to give condolences to his wife, Lady Allen, his brothers, and his band, his church congregation, which is the New Bethel Church of God in Christ, located in Toledo, Ohio, and the entire Mendez and Allen family. Of course, Bishop Allen comes from a large family here in Monroe. He was one of 12 children. So he has a great legacy and lots of family members and friends here in Monroe. I personally have so many fond memories of being a little girl and watching them come back from off the road. He was my neighbor in Greenwick Cherry Square Apartments back in the early 70s. And we would gather around when they would return, and they would rehearse, set up their instruments and rehearse. And those are some great memories I had. He would also grab us up when we would be playing around the Orchard neighborhood and invite us into the Bible study at his first church, which was Holiness Temple, located on Conant Street. But we were also fascinated by his voice and his celebrity status. It didn't take much persuading to get us into the Bible study classes. I would say I was around 11 years old then, so I'm dating myself. But anyway, my age is public information, so who cares? But some of my favorite personal songs as a child and even now into adulthood are one song, I Belong to You, and Ain't No Need of Crying, and I'm Gonna Make It After All. Those last two, Ain't No Need of Crying and I'm Gonna Make It After All, have been on repeat at my house for a while, and especially since he passed, because it's really fitting for what we're going through today with all this division in the world and fighting. It's just really inspirational songs that basically just say, no matter what we're going through, whether it's the sunshine or the rain, we're going to make it after all. So that's a heavy rotation at my house. If you haven't heard it, I would suggest you YouTube it, and it will lift you up. One thing about Bishop that I wanted to talk about was we always look forward to him dancing. And a couple of the songs that we would all request whenever he came to Monroe to do a mini concert or an impromptu concert would be songs like Miracle Worker and You Make Me Want to Dance. He was a prolific songwriter and musician, and his voice was a gift from God. From the guttural gospel groans to the operatic high notes, His voice could move any and everyone who was blessed to hear it. As young men, as I said, they will often set up their instruments on the porch of their beloved mother's house on Elmira Street and give free concerts where the entire neighborhood of sometimes 200 or 300 people would come out to enjoy their high energy dancing in the street music. Throughout the 80s, they were regular headliners for Monroe's Floral City Festival, where they would bring that same high energy gospel music to the downtown streets of Monroe. In 2017, they were honored to headline the Monroe City Jazz Festival, where again, we were all dancing in the streets. As I mentioned last week, his mixing of traditional gospel with R&B helped change the sound of gospel music and inspire generations of artists to come. He was known as the godfather of contemporary gospel music. That's a high honor. He was inducted into the International Gospel Hall of Fame. Mr. Allen and his brothers and band traveled the world spreading the gospel through music for over 50 years, probably closer to 60. They recently released a Christmas album that I'm sure will go platinum as well if it hasn't already. They've had recent gospel hits all the way throughout the years. With a gospel great Kirk Franklin, and even more recently, he had a platinum selling hit with rapper Snoop Dogg, who I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but he's a world-renowned rapper. And despite international fame, the Rance Allen Group has been a staple in the city of Monroe. They've mentioned in several interviews, the city of Monroe is a place full of diversity, beauty, and hardworking people, which we love. I say all this to say that Monroe had a jewel in Rance Allen. I could go on and on about his accomplishment, but I'll just say when I brought his name up last Monday, I couldn't have imagined we wouldn't be surprising him with a street name for him in his hometown. That was the plan, to surprise him. And we never know when death will come calling, but it doesn't stop us as a community from moving forward with plans to honor him and the legendary group. There's a saying in the church that advises giving someone their flowers when they are still here to smell them. And personally, I was able to do that in sharing with Bishop Allen how he personally influenced my life. And I feel the city of Monroe was able to do that to the extent we invited when the Rance Allen Group headlined the last jazz festival at St. Mary's Park. And I know he was able to feel the love there that day. But I hope that we will be able to honor Bishop Allen and the Rance Allen Group with something more permanent in the city of Monroe. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini.
I want to say good luck to all the candidates. Andrew, I also think you'd be very good. The campaign's been tough for all of you guys because you couldn't go door to door like you wanted to. People get out there and vote. Be mindful of everyone, respect each other, keep your distance and wear your mask and stay safe. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just have a couple comments and I'll be brief, but I want to start by announcing on November 7th, there will be Exchange Club of Monroe is having a Veterans Flags of Honor display at the River Race National Battlefield Park new Visitor and Education Center at the entrance to there on North Dixie and East Elm Avenue. That begins at 9 o'clock. There's some presentation with veterans and honor guards regarding a recognition and honor of our veterans. The next item, I want to congratulate our new city assessor, Paula Smith, for her contract here this evening. And Paula's worked many years for the city of Monroe and done an excellent job, and we look forward to working with her, as we all do, in her new position as assessor. The third item was Councilman Vining. I don't think I can say it better than you did, so I'll just say recognizing the loss of Rance Allen from our community, but the memories will always be here. We'll always remember what he did for Monroe. And I know that it was just about a couple of weeks ago, Councilwoman and I were chatting about this very topic and some opportunities that we think may be within the city as we revisit our naming policy and come up with a thought process of how to appropriately recognize that request as well as others that are kind of not on hold, but just pending. Last, of course, is to vote. I want to thank the Clerk Treasurer Lavoy and her staff for all the preparation today and support from the other members within our city employees. And Councilman Jimmy, I agree with your comments. Please be safe, vote, and it's great to see the comments earlier about the volume that have already come in, and we hope that will continue throughout the day, the entire day tomorrow. Those are my comments. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
Just a couple of things. We have seen a record, at least for the time that I've been here, record absentee turnout. We have mailed or distributed 6,000 plus ballots, and we've gotten about, I've lost my notes here, but about 5,500 back. So we're on trend with the rest of the country, and that doesn't always happen in the city of Monroe. So yes, the voters have really been highly participatory, and that's definitely to be applauded. I'm not sure what tomorrow will bring. We see anywhere between 7,500 to 8,000 voters in the last two November elections. So we're almost there. What kind of growth we'll see, I just don't know, but we're prepared. But despite the fact that we're prepared, I really need everyone to bring their patience. We are going to be physically distancing as much as we can. So that means you're going to see lines. You will see lines, and there's just really going to be no way around it. The election inspectors, we have quite a few election inspectors at each precinct. We have done the best we can to prepare for the large crowds, but no matter what we do, voting is still always has and always will take time. So I welcome any comments. If people are out there and they're frustrated with something, please call me, call the clerk. 734-497-5319 is my personal cell phone number. I want to hear from voters if they feel that something isn't going well, because I can take a look at it, assess it, and make whatever adjustments are necessary. So please don't hesitate to contact me. I want to thank all of the city departments. They've really stepped up, and I've always envisioned making these large elections more of a total team effort, and I feel we've made great strides with that this year. Particularly want to thank Chad Tolstead, Chief McCormick, and the rest of the MPD. They're fully prepared, and they've done a great job working with me up to this point to get everything ready. So I really, really appreciate that. The Monroe Fire Department has been equally helpful, and they are ready to go and lend a hand on election day as well. So I just want to thank them in particular. Polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. So if you are in line at 8 p.m., we will have election inspectors. They're going to go and literally stand at the end of the line at 8 p.m. So anyone in line in front of them will be able to vote. Anyone standing behind them, unfortunately, will have missed the deadline. It's the same with City Hall. If you are trying to get your absentee ballot to us by 8 p.m., you need to do that, because it must be in City Hall at 8 p.m. If you run in the door at 8 p.m., I'll wait for you to take a breath and hand me your ballot. But if you get here at 8:01 or 8:02, there's nothing I can do. It's completely out of my hands. And finally, if you want to register to vote, you must register to vote at the city clerk's office. So again, we open at 7 a.m. at the clerk's office as well. So come here and we will get you registered to vote. I think the last thing I want to say, and I'm encouraging all of you to spread the word, is if you do not live in the city, please do not bring us your absentee ballot. Please do not bring us your absentee ballot. You must get it to your city or township that is on the envelope that issued it to you. We will do our very best to get them to the townships where they belong and the cities where they belong, but really to help yourself out and to make sure your vote is counted, please, please, please take it to your own township. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to the post office. We received ballots today, one that belongs in Virginia, one that belonged, oh gosh, I can't remember where the other one was. I know it was like going to be way too far for me to drive. It was out of state. I don't remember where it was, but it wasn't Toledo. I can tell you that. And I called the post office. These were dropped in our Dropbox, by the way. And I called the post office, and both the one time they explained to me their system for today, and that ballot by midday was on its way to its destination in another state. And then there was another one that missed that special process that they had gotten ready, and they figured out what they were going to do, and they came up with a plan, and they're doing the best they can to get that ballot to Virginia in time. So we hear a lot of bad news stories about the post office, and a lot of bad news stories, period, about this election. But there really are some really hardworking people that are doing the very best they can to make sure that voters get their voices heard. So I think we should just try to keep that in mind when tomorrow gets a little tense. There's a lot of really good people out there trying and sacrificing a lot to make this happen. So thank you for letting me share that story. Thank you to the post office for continuing in spite of all of the bad press, some of which they brought on themselves. I understand that. And thank you to all of you for being very supportive of this election. We will get through it. I don't think it'll be over on November 3rd, but we will get you the results as quickly and as efficiently and as best we can in the coming days. So thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Treasurer. I know that you said that voting does take time, but I think of voting, and along with a few other things, it's a great investment of our time as well. And that's what makes the results and the changes in movement forward in our country. So thank you. City Manager, any comments?
Thank you, Aaron. Just a couple items. One I see as one of our attendees, Daniel Chirac. That's an example of where there was some high grass invoices that went to the mortgage company that had the mortgage on that home, and those were in 2019, and he didn't take possession until January of earlier this year. So while he's there, I'm just going to say I'm aware of it, and I'll probably work with you to try and get that resolved so that the payment, we do receive our payment, but hopefully from the mortgage company. The other is just as a follow-up from last week, or yeah, it would be last week, regarding the Lotus Fountain and the Indian burial comment. Mr. Green, we talked about it at our staff meeting the next day, and he offered some insight and looked at a little more digging on it. So, Mr. Green, if you could just take a moment and share what your findings.
Muted, sir.
They should have automatic unmutes or something like that. But in addition to my own recollections of having been there when this was occurring, I was able to get my hands on the news articles from the Monroe Evening News. So there were two stories that ran in the Monroe Evening News on June 26th and June 27th, 1990, describing the unearthing of bones during excavation work for the Lotus Fountain. After the discovery, the University of Michigan was contacted, and archaeologists from U of M were to test the skeletal remains to determine their age, approximately, and ethnicity. The bones were initially described as being found in sterile soil, that is a horizon that had not yet been disturbed. In July, another article ran in the Evening News and reported that testing determined the bones were human and were a male and female. So it was not a single skeleton, but actually two. They died about 1,000 years ago, according to the archaeologists that were doing the testing, although they didn't do carbon testing. The female was estimated to be between 25 and 35 years old. The male was 40 to 50 years old. The female skeleton was relatively intact. However, U of M archaeologists that did the reviews indicated that the exact dating was difficult because of disturbances to the site. Then a little bit later in August of that same year, the news announced that a burial ceremony was being planned for September 13th, 1990. The article stated that the burial ceremony is for the bones of an American Indian. The state's Commission on Indian Affairs was assisting with finding someone to conduct a ceremony which would follow Indian laws and customs, which included placing the remains in either a birch bark or pine box for reinterment. A reinterment ceremony was conducted in September of 1990 by Thomas Peters, a representative of the American Indian community. The ceremony was private, with the skeletal remains placed in a pine box constructed without nails, as requested by the Commission on Indian Affairs. A plaque honoring the dead was to be placed on the side of the fountain, which it was. So all of this goes back to what I was kind of remembering when I had talked with Mr. Pastu. This was not a cemetery that was disturbed. This was skeletal remains that were found. What it would be referred to today by archaeologists and a number of the agencies that do a lot of work that hire archaeologists is an inadvertent find. These happen. They happen when they're working on roads and streets and sidewalks and those kind of things where they run into these skeletal remains. The other point for all of this is this was handled primarily by the county through the County Historical Museum at the time. And so the city of Monroe did not have a lot of input on it, but we were aware of it. And as I said, a number of the city council at the time participated in the ceremonies, not only for the dedication of the Lotus Fountain, but also a number of the things that went on related to the reinterment.
Thank you, Mr. Green, for the review. I know that as comments or questions come forward, I know that speaking with Mr. Pastu earlier, these are discussed by administration. They are followed up and want to make sure that the response of what occurred at that time gets shared with the public as well. Mr. Pastu, other comments?
Nothing else tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Next is citizen comments. I'll see Clerk Treasurer if there's any requests from those in attendance. I see we have 7 attendees. And if there's any public comment or citizens comment at this time, it would be appropriate. I see no hands raised. With that, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamar, scored by Councilwoman Germaini to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Muted. Yeah.
Yes.
Iko Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaini,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you all this evening, and thanks for the comments. And everybody, please vote.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.